Welcome back to this week's episode. I have such a beautiful magic light. I guess what came to mind to share with you. I love this woman, Holly Starr Allen. Thank you for being here. I've had the pleasure of meeting you and being in masterminding with you, and now I can't wait for you to share all your beautiful light and wisdom with my audience. Holly is a speaker, a healer, and an innovative leader. She is the founder of Ignite Shine Bright, which I can't wait to hear more about, where you help women connect deeply to levels of their soul so they can remember their true soul's mission. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Oh, and just love on your audience and just be in your energy too. I love all the wisdom that you share with us and how you make everything so simple with this numerology and higher level thinking. It's just incredible.
Well, thank you so much. I love that. And we were sitting here geeking out before recording. And like it's just what we do. Ever since I met you, I felt like I've known you for centuries and centuries, and that we're supposed to just
Yes.
giggle and have a lot of slumber parties and have a lot of fun. Like that's like
Thank you.
basically it.
Slumber
And then
party,
share wisdom.
giggling. Yes. Sign me up.
Um, so you guys are receiving this energy from that space, and we're excited to bring it to you. So what are we gonna? What we're not playing here. We're just gonna bring it on in. So Holly,
Exactly.
I'd love to know how you got started and what your journey's been along the way to the mission that you're on right now, helping to empower human beings.
Yes. And I love the journey, right? Because I think so often we get stuck in the journey thinking, oh, why this and why that? And so I've really recoined the rock bottom as your springboard because honestly, Ignite Shine Bright was created and birthed. And I always say it was given to me because I was at a moment of a tower moment where it felt like everything was. I don't know how I exit from here. I don't know what my next move is from here. I had been loyal to corporate America for over 10 years, star student, all the accolades, all the things. And we had a shift in leadership, and there had some different components of envy, jealousy, and these types of things. And I found myself getting a phone call on a Friday saying, don't come back on Monday for no apparent reason. And
Oh.
so here I was very shocked and like, wait, what just happened and why and how? And is this even legal? And like, just completely in
Mhm.
my humanness of like, that's not actually what I thought was going to happen today. Okay. So here I am, had built this career and loved everything I was doing to be completely starting at square zero and thinking, now what? And
Mm.
I remember going through this journey of, wow, I know who I am and I do the work. And if I can be this disempowered, hold on a second. There's so many more people and women out there that need to remember. And so, something that I love that people say about me is I clear the space for you to come back on your stage because so many times people are trying to take that space and move you around and make you be a certain thing. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm like the little bouncer, the little energetic bouncer that's like, no, 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 this is her space, move away. And I help clear that where you can come back in and be that director of your own life. And so I remember sitting at my remote workstation because I work from home and I was standing at my office and I was like, this is not okay. Like this is not okay. And what would the world be like if we were more empowered? If we really did feel safe to be in our power? And literally Ignite Shine Bright came beaming through my body and I was like, "Oh, I really like that." And I went and
Wow.
checked all the socials and I went and checked the LLC and it was available. And I feel like I had tried so many times to create businesses and names and nothing was ever available and that's like a variation. And I was just blown away that it just came to me. So I always say, like, I'm the face of my company, but Source created this company. And I'm just the person out here navigating in this 3D reality to say, yes, this is what is possible for you.
Oh, I love that so much. So let's talk. We have a lot of juicy topics to talk about today, and I want to start with the human experience versus the soul's experience and how you hijack yourself back from your human's limitations.
Yes.
Because I think it's a good place to start when you're talking about empowering your life from this new perspective and this remembering of who we really are. What gets in the way of the remembering?
What gets in the way of the remembering? That is the human. So I like to talk about the human having only five senses. And I love my human. I'm so excited I have this human form. I can hug people, I can laugh, I can have slumber parties, I can dance, I can do all the fun things. But sometimes my human is limited to these five senses where it doesn't get the memo. It doesn't understand this is what my soul's mission is. And sometimes we have to do what I call very non-linear things to create that mass movement of energy that we know is real, right? We can't explain it, but I just got to do it. It's just the way it is. It's like you and I, we met and we're just like, okay, like we just met, but like I don't know how many lifetimes we've done together. Like this is so incredible. And that's something my sweet human doesn't comprehend or understand. Oh, she's nice, she's friendly, she's pretty, like it feels safe. But then when we get into these soul evolutions and these expansions and these big pivots and like these tower moments and these overcomings, well, that creates dis-ease, uncomfortability, and a little bit of fear, sometimes a lot of fear, depending on what movement we're doing, right? And that's where the human has that responsibility and job, keep us comfortable, keep us safe, make sure we're okay. Well, we know in our soul that we're okay. We know in our soul that we're safe because we can feel the stirring saying, oh, yep, go ahead and talk to that person. Go ahead and say that. And I remember when my mediumship came on board and I was on a client call and there was this little boy that just kept coming in. And I was just like, this isn't your session. This isn't your session. Go away. This isn't your session. And he was like, no, ask her about me. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I tell this lady, "Hey, do you know about this 2-year-old boy?" And I literally said it, which I had a lot of fear in my heart saying this because I didn't want to create conflict for this person or what are you talking about? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like disrupting the trust. And she starts bawling. This was her little baby brother that passed very early on that disrupted her whole family dynamics. And here she was on this healing call. And had I not been able to understand my soul and the stirring and this other level of senses versus my logic of how do I know this? How is this coming through? What does this really mean? Okay, I've lost my mind. What is happening right now? And
Oh,
that's where we have to navigate and say, I honor my human experience, but we have to communicate back to our human to say, thank you. You're right. This is scary. This is uncomfortable, but let me give you the evidence of where we're going next. Let's look backwards to some of the times we've taken these leaps. We've looked nonlinear. We've done some of these, what you're feeling right now is crazy, scary, and nonlinear. And look how that turned out. And so that's where I feel like we're almost playing two people simultaneously, and we have to continue the conversation to support each other because we can't just say, "Oh, forget about the human. He'll get on board eventually. Whatever. I'm going to force him to do this," because that's when we have adrenal fatigue. That's when we have burnout. That's when we
mhm.
get so lost in our identity, we don't know which way is up or down or what our next step is, right? So we
Yeah.
can hold space for both of them and we can say, "Oh, hi, beautiful human. Yes, I can totally understand where this would be out of your cup of tea and you feel very uncomfortable, but let me give you the bridges to get to the next step. Your nervous system regulates. You feel you feel the fear switch to inspiration, and your human almost releases this no, 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 and to this, okay, show me more. And you get to that
Yeah.
next step of taking the next step.
Yeah, I love that. I was writing down things as you were talking, and I don't think anyone listening is going to be a stranger to accolades, achievements, and proving oneself in this lifetime for whatever reason led us to that. And it's not necessarily, I'm going to say this with a caveat, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be the very thing that's built in within the limitations because we've defined success as a certain way, or it has to look a certain way as the human. And really, sometimes what is going on is we are always integrating at some level with our spirit. And so for so many of us, especially these last few years, we are like popcorning and awakening, and we're not really understanding what's happening because no one teaches us how to understand the human and how the mind works and where it leads us next. And that all of those thoughts are creating beliefs that live in our body, which is the truth, which keeps us in fight or flight, or
Mm,
in the ease, in the belief of what's possible. Right. And so I was thinking of the very next section where we're talking about how your human may be holding you back from your soul's biggest evolution. You already kind of started going into that. Like, how do we know what our soul's evolution is if we're not really ever taught what our human is?
that is a great question. And The way I see it and feel it in my body is we were everything before we even came to this lifetime. We
I think
literally
there's,
were everything. We were fully completed. We had all the things. And it was like, okay, this is the ninja course I want to create for myself to help me remember in this lifetime. Because it's like we knew when we transmitted ourselves into this timeline, into this earth and this body and etc., then we were going to forget everything because this humanness wasn't programmed with all the things that we know. And that's why I say, okay, the human has five senses. You have very like expanded senses that you don't even know about yet. And let's not limit ourselves. And I always make the joke that, you know, when we stepped into this human body, it was kind of complicated. Like we had to learn how to talk, we had to learn how to get attention, we had to learn how to walk and feed ourselves and go to school. And it's like we got so focused on this human. And that's when we got the accolades and performing and all these identities that we attach to. That it's like, that's why we created the ninja course to like poke us and redirect us and create these pivots where it's just like, wait a minute, I did all the things right and it's still not working out. And I don't feel peace and I don't feel joy and I don't feel happiness. What's wrong with me? Why? But if you didn't have that little poke or that little ninja course, you wouldn't be asking the questions to help you remember and reactivate what you already were.
yeah, I love that because like the whole, I was writing remembering and I circled it before you said the word, which was fun. Because it really is. And I think like I'll speak from my experience and you can speak from yours and then everyone else can discern from their own experience. But 10 years ago, I wasn't where I am now. And 6 years ago, everything started to awaken and open for me. And physically in the world, that wouldn't have been what I said was happening. It looked a lot like rug being pulled. Flip. And everything we've been doing for 30 years shifted, and we had this opportunity to just reinvent ourselves and start over. But along with that came all the doubt and all the imposter syndrome and all the loss and all, but it was this very big transitional stage that I believe I was always intended and agreed to, so I can come to the next half of my life
Yes.
living in this purpose and being able to express the growth that, we don't have to be stressed out, we don't have to be burned out, we don't have to be living this life this way that we can often feel is on autopilot. And
Yeah.
so when I look back now, I can see it's been a remembering this whole time. And the language came, and the people that I was to connect with to understand next came. So that
Yeah.
moment of who am I? Is this all there is to life? There's some version of that that really kickstarts that ignition and begins to ripple effect down the next conversations, the things you hear, the YouTube video, like the book that you pick up, the book that you realize was on your shelf for 15 years that you never really looked at again. Like I had this moment, Holly, where I went to my bookcase and I'm like, I have had to collect these books when I was 16. So I was looking for self-help at 16, which I understand with my life story. That's another podcast. But like these are the books I chose.
Uh-huh. Because
And
you
these
knew.
are the books I would go geek out and choose now, but I don't even remember choosing them.
Right.
And so here they are, this incomplete library that I probably never read or really got much out of.
Mhm.
Yet at certain points, like the window opened and then I shut it, and the window opened and I shut it. And so I was just sitting here going, I think the answer to that question is, our biggest soul evolution is in the remembering, and it's going to be a constant cycle of remembering what we've forgotten or what we've lost or thought we lost along the way, as we
Mhm.
really find that we can't just be a human in this body, we're so much more.
Exactly.
And even the language around that I feel like has expanded so much. We're so more familiar with channeling. We're so much more familiar with mediumship. There's not as much of a stigma in numerology, and you're studying human design, all these things that we were told were, not for us or the devil. And I think it's really it for me, it's not. It's the most divine thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. But learning who we are through the judgments of those things,
Yes.
through the pathway that ignites our soul, and the ownership and the self authority and who we can allow ourselves to become when we step the roles and identities aside. That's the journey.
That is the journey. And that's the only mission is
Yes.
to be on the journey of self-discovery to remember and reawaken.
Yes.
I
And
think
love both. and
Yeah,
love both, because you
love
can't
both.
get to one without having traversed the other. And so often in the work that I do, and I'm sure you too, like, we're literally creating a shelf in the heart, and
Mhm,
we're letting the abandonment, and we're letting the trust, and we're letting the self-worth pieces that led us to this place nicely tucked away from the fears that brought us to where we are, and
mhm.
that they're a part of us. They don't need to take over, and they get the little door shut, and they get to just live there as we begin to develop more of who we are, when those aren't the preceding voices in our heads, or the past cycling over and over again, keeping us in that limitation that you've been so brilliantly speaking of.
I
So
love
that
that you oh,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead. Oh, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna add, I love that you call it a shelf because I have this joke with my sister of what book did you pick up? Were you supposed to pick up that book? Because I think a lot of times the human condition is we think we're the answer to every problem or
Mm,
every issue. And so we pick up other people's books unknowingly. And then that's where we forget who we truly are because now we've got all these different versions of ourselves that we've kind of placed ourselves in these places that we weren't necessarily supposed to fulfill that role. And so when we take the abandonment off the shelf, when we take these different things that say, oh, you know what? That's actually not mine. I'm going to give that back to you. I'm going to let you handle that for yourself because that is your growth. And I think when we can realize that we can't take away other people's lessons because it delays their awakening,
mm,
and if we can simply observe and have empathy and love and show and share the example, then it's like we become that light. And I always say, like, people get so afraid of fear and shadows and the, the dark void that sometimes we go through. And I always laugh and say, the light is actually in the shadow itself. You've got to have the
mhm.
light to make the finger puppet on the wall. You don't just have darkness and the puppet appears. You know what I'm saying? You have to have light even in your darkest moments. But sometimes we forget to span out and look at the whole picture. And
Mm.
that's where I've kind of coined the rock bottom as your springboard. Because for the first time, when we hit rock bottom, because mine was kind of like that too, like the rug just snatched underneath me, and I was like, "What? What?
New place I'm in.
Okay. I thought I already
Oh, this
did."
is rock bottom. Okay.
Right. And it was so freeing because I was able to have clarity. I was able to say, you know what? I put all my safety in these things and that didn't really prove to be safe. So now where do I start? Like it just gave me all this freedom to start recreating from who I was, not who everybody said I was supposed to be, not following the yellow brick road path of what the normal societal get a job, do the education, be loyal, all the things, right? And it was like, wait a minute. Well, if I'm going to start over, who am I? What do I truly want? Who do I want to become? And no, you don't have to wait for your rock bottom. You don't have to wait for the rug to be pulled from underneath you to ask yourself those questions.
Right. And please don't wait. There's an easier way. Like, it wakes you up, right? But like all along, I think that's the beauty in both of the work that we do. It's like, but you can be that now. You don't have to wait for everything. In fact, we don't have to have the pain to have the pleasure, and we don't have to have the hurt to have the harmony. We
No.
actually get to prepare and grow and evolve. So when life chaoses or life flips, then it does what it does. Life lifes.
Yes. Every time.
The foundation is here inside, the inner game that keeps us mm, grounded like the football player ready for the hit, right?
Yeah.
Versus walking the tightrope, hoping you don't fall off the tightrope on the tall teeter.
Right.
So it's so powerful. So when we talk about simultaneously having both of these things in action, I start thinking of like the different parts of us, the parts integration. There's one part that really wants the success and she's willing to go for it. And the other part that just feels like whatever, blah, 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 blah. And so we operate off of these two spaces, and really it takes a minute to learn this about yourself and to be honest and truthful with where you find yourself at any given moment around money, health, relationships, growth, whatever that is. What's really getting more of the thoughts? Because I don't think they're equal.
Mm-mm.
There might be a tug of war. You know, I
Mhm.
can do it, I can't do it, I'm enough, I'm not enough, like whatever those are. But the ultimate power that comes within us to be able to alchemize that and move it into something more, because we have this mechanism, this beautiful mind and body, the thoughts,
Yeah.
the feelings, and the ability to take action with all these beautiful fingers and toes and all the good things. You
Yes.
know, how do you see this simultaneously, and then and where do you want to take it from that piece of the conversation?
Well, I like to think of things almost in a gamified way. And so it's like, what if the main mission of this lifetime, because we chose to come as a human, was to have that partnership where you're like, oh, it's interesting. I have 70% empowered thinking and belief in myself, and I have
Mhm.
30% that is trying to hijack me. And that's what I call it when the human is trying to hijack you, where you just feel like you're like, oh, I don't know. Can I? Will it? No, no, no. And so that's where I'm like, okay, when those little hijack moments come, then it's almost like a video game where you're just like, "Ooh, a new person has come out on the scene. All right. What do we need to know about this person?" And then
Mhm.
that's where we have to say, "Okay, what role are they playing? And do I want them to play that role? Because I'm the director of my movie." And
That's
I think
right.
this is what people forget is we have a choice in every single moment. We have a choice. We have a choice. Hear that loud and clear because some
Yes,
people,
girl.
"Oh,
Louder
I
for the
don't
back, louder for the back.
know." And this is where you either make the choice not to speak up or not to have a choice and let someone else fill that choice for you, or you say, time out, time out. I need a minute. And I think that's what we really need to get better at is, oh no, this is uncomfortable. I'm having feelings, bypass, find another way to feel better quicker so we can override this feeling. Well, guess what?
Netflix. Food. Alcohol.
Exactly, exactly. Where's the remote? Call
Payday.
yes, and it's just like, "Okay, hold on a second. If we could just be with that, then we can say, is this the human condition?" Like we talked about before, we're growing, we're expanding. Well, duh, it's gonna come up. Alarm, alarm, alarm. Holly, do you know if this is safe? Holly, are you sure about this? Holly, will you die if you do this? I'm like, no, no, no. Like, leave me alone. And this is the game I play with myself is
Right.
hold on a second, I'm humaning. Just let me have this moment for my human to get on the right page with me. Okay, human, listen, this is what we're doing. This is why. Here's the evidence. Okay, now you feel safe. Great. Okay, here we go moving forward.
Right.
And I've kind of made it a mission to challenge fear
Oh.
because what people don't realize is fear has a role. There's 8 different roles and over half of those are for growth, not stunting your growth, not stopping you. Only 3 of them are, to keep you alive in these basic situations. But the others are to really push you to that next level of your comfort zone to really expand you and show you what you're capable of. The resilience, the strength, the power, the mindset, the creativity. All these things are just hiding, but you don't know until you get to that little pressure cooker point, right? Where you're just like,
Yeah.
and then you force yourself to make a choice, but we don't have to wait till we get to that point.
Well, do you remember, like, so there's many humans on the planet who
Mhm.
are literally asleep to any of these concepts. Doesn't mean it's better or worse. It just means there's such a small percentage of people who seek evolution of
Mhm.
their own capabilities. I think the programming, like you're talking about, that conditioning is we're programmed to just do the same things every single day in, day out, and I don't know. I don't, I can't imagine somebody not waking up and saying, is this all there is? Because it's some version of that begins a path of rediscovery or deeper discovery. And I have it hasn't always been easy, but I have no regrets from
No,
where I
absolutely
found
not.
myself. But I can tell you, I literally was sleepwalking through life with all the responsibilities and all the momming. Like I love my kids. It was
Yeah.
all intended at the certain time for which everything awakened, I believe.
Mhm.
But I look back and go, been under the rock? Like, has this been conversation for
Right.
decades?
Who's been talking about this? Why didn't I get the memo?
Never been
Where's
in
that
my
newsletter in
sphere.
my inbox?
Ever, which is one of the reasons I love this podcast. There are women who knew from birth and they never forgot, and they just kind of fought themselves in their skills, right? And I'm just like, all of it opened 6 years ago for me. It's been a fast and furious ride. But it's just so good because that's why I love sharing these stories. When was the time, and for listeners right now, like, was there a time when you found yourself like in that mode of almost automation, of sleeping, of not being aware that there could be more, you could be more, there's more to experience in this life because we are so stuck in our limitations that and fear that we didn't know how to get out,
Mhm.
you know? Was that a part of your journey, or were you somebody who always kind of knew? Like, how did you grow up? What was your
You know, it's interesting that you say that because hindsight, I always knew. Living it, I had no idea. And so it is this level of awareness that happens where you're just like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. I actually felt things, knew things, and saw energy moving when I was 7,
Yeah.
when I was 3. And now that I've done all the healing work I've done, it was actually when I was in my crib. Like I go back to inner child moments where I can see when I was just a tiny baby in my crib, seeing the chaos between my
Mhm.
parents and like diffusing it with my little baby energy. And I'm just like, this is mind blowing. And that's one of the reasons why now my work is focused on kids as well, because I don't want them to unlearn and be conditioned and not feel normal with their innate abilities. This is what
Mm.
they came into this world with. Let's not turn them back off again. So many of my clients are like, well, when I was 12, when I was 13, when I was 2, and it's
Yes.
like, but now they're asking me to open up their gifts again, like, well, how do I get back to being that person? And I'm
Isn't
like,
that wild? And like I was just thinking, I was remembering this mom who brought her 2 teenage girls to retreat. And her mom was just trying to figure things out. And she just had this gumption that her girls may enjoy this, being with women, being in mountains. And so they came, and it was so precious and beautiful to have this. I think they were 11 and 17 at the time, maybe a little bit older, somewhere in between there. Their energy there with the women of all different ages, and they were just as interested in hearing the stories as we were as having their perspective for the exact same reason that you said. The deeper story, because we shared numerology there, we shared their charts with them, and we are sharing, basic things and helping people through whatever they found themselves in patterns while we're in the room, and opening that perspective a bit more. It wasn't them looking at their individual,
mhm,
reports that was so enthralling for the 3 of those humans. It was seeing each other when they turned the pages and said, "Oh, I can see this in you, mom," or, "I didn't know I can see this in me," where they can see each other
mhm,
for the gifts and the skill sets that they had. And then the conversation started coming out that someone could read cards and someone else can do the thing, and they actually got permission to be their unit of mother-daughter and more of who they were, instead of in a world that tells you you're not normal if you have intuition or if you have these things. There was such a family healing that happened over that weekend, unintentional, but obviously it's one of the reasons they all were to come together, and a
mhm.
lot of diffusing of teenage energy around, judgment. And
Yes.
oh, the gift that will continue to ripple out for the next 30 years, like I think about that and the hugeness of the heart and the sheer importance of exactly what you're doing. And I love that for your work. Like I have daughters who inspired me too, but I don't think until this very moment of us talking about it in this way, of how important it is for reaching the kids at that age with the emotional mastery tools and the guidance,
Mhm.
but also the parents. So it's not just going back and forth like a ping pong table, and it's not something they just have to learn or and also if the parents learn it, they don't have to force feed it to the kids. Your kids already know. You just need to give them
Exactly.
space to be who they are.
Yes.
And so I don't know, it's felt very important to start downloading and channeling that in this moment, but, like, that's a big mission, and I think it's very much needed because of the same reason that we're not learning these innate tools in school, and
Mm-mm.
we never probably will, and so
Unfortunately.
embracing these times and embracing these connections. And the moment that you came across this podcast, or the moment that you find Holly online or myself online or anyone sharing this, because every step of the way is important for somebody along their journey.
Every single step of the way, just like you were sharing, 16 years old, you didn't really know why you were picking up these books. And then how many years later, they were the most impactful pivot for you, right? And they found you at just the right time. Like
They
they gathered
did.
dust for how many years, and then you're just like, whoa, how did I
Well, and
have
they probably served me then, and life was just so heavy that I forgot. But I never got rid of them.
mm,
They went with me through college and everywhere else, and there's just no accidents in life. And so when you can look at that from that bigger picture and be always remembering, you don't have to have all the answers. Everything's going to unfold. That doesn't mean I know exactly everything I'm doing next. That doesn't mean I don't have human doubt and fear come up, when we step into these bigger versions of our truth.
mhm.
But I won't stop. And I know you won't either. And I just think it's such a beautiful conversation to keep having with the world. So, where can people find you?
Yes, I am on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me at I am Holly Starr with 2 R's. And I would love to invite you guys, like Michelle said, these conversations are what more of us need to be talking about. And so this is where I stepped into my light even when it was scary. Michelle stepped into her light even when it was a little uncomfortable, because our human is like, wait, I've always been fill in the identity, right? Like I'm only able to do fill in the identity. And it's like if we can create more tribes where people are normalizing these conversations, oh, you're having a human moment? Great. What can I do to support you in this moment? Would you like me to hold space? Would you like me to witness you? Would you like me to just hear you? How many friends do you have asking you those questions? How many times are you asking your girlfriend those questions? We have to make room for both the soul and the human. And we
Yes.
have to love both of them in each one of their phases and stages, knowing, just like you said, Michelle, it is all working out perfectly. And so whenever I have my little shifty shift of the rug when I'm like, oh, this is weird, this is new, this is a pivot, what is happening? I'm just like, okay, I have evidence that anytime this is pivoted, it's only made my life brighter and better. And I've only learned more about myself, and I've only become even more empowered. And so let's leave the space of uh-oh or oh no's and lead with, ooh, I wonder what comes next. I wonder what this looks like, and
Yeah.
change it from fear to curiosity.
I love that so much. And you have a free gift for the listeners?
I do, I do. So we've talked so much about the human experience. And so something that's really benefited me is pulling my thoughts out of my head and putting those thoughts on trial. So I've created this really cool game, because I told you guys I love to gamify things, where you can go to my website, www.igniteshinebright.com, and you'll see at the very top the evidence game. And you'll see, you can download this and you will have examples. For example, I would tell myself I was lazy all the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so lazy. I just want to watch Netflix, or I just want to do this. And when I put that thought on trial, I realized, well, this doesn't actually add up, because I ran a 5K today. I did all these things and da 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 da. So I'm not lazy. I desire rest. And when you think about going from the energy of I am lazy to I need rest, it's a whole different energy that you can propel
Yes.
and power yourself with, right? So the
Yeah.
evidence game gives you the two ways to put the belief on trial and then look to see, is that true or not? Because I feel like a lot of times we tell ourselves things that are just not true.
Yeah.
And we really have to get away from that if we want to step into our true power and truly be empowered.
Oh, I agree. And I think also a lot of times as we grow, we don't realize where we're habitually stuck in
Yes.
that old thought pattern, right? And so we can only be aware of what we are aware of so we can take a new action and choice from there. What a beautiful gift. You guys go find the evidence game, go play the game. We'd love to hear how that helps you and expands you. I was just thinking too, like in my Facebook group today, we were talking about the power of thoughts. And I'm like, it is just everywhere in conversation in beautiful ways and I love when the synchronicities come in like that. How I love leaving our podcast is by asking you one final question.
And
Um, when it comes to purpose, presence, and prosperity, which is the subtitle of the Michelle Laine podcast, how do you define those for yourself?
Mm. Purpose means that I live a very intentional life, that I liberate other people from the human experience of believing less than is possible and allowing them to truly see and feel and honor themselves by truly being all of themselves.
Beautiful.
And presence is so important to me because I think that's where we literally get to feel the moment of the miracle in every moment. Because I celebrate birthdays so big because it's a miracle that you're here. So your presence alone is a gift. And if I can be present with myself, I'm giving myself that gift over and over again. And whether that be like, wow, I'm present and I'm hearing the chatter in my head, or wow, I'm present and I feel the racing heartbeat in my chest, or I'm present, I feel the grass underneath my feet. It's just bringing myself back into the moment and not going forward or backwards,
Yeah.
but staying present. And prosperity, peace equals prosperity to me. Because I feel like if we're in a state of peace, even and this is where, like, I love a catchphrase someone shared with me, "Keep the storm outside your window," because life can
Mhm.
life. You can be having a human moment, and you can still have peace in that moment. And I
Right.
think that's where we truly create the prosperity, because we don't get in a cycle of chasing our tails or gloomsday or lack mentality, but instead, we're just like, "Huh, is there an opportunity to have peace in this moment? Because I trust this is working for my highest good. I know that the opportunities will present themselves. And I know that if I pull in this peaceful moment, my brain, my human brain, my soul's eyes will start seeing what I'm missing right now with fear. And it just shifts everything.
So beautiful. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for spending your time here with us this week and all of your beautiful magic. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I love this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, you guys, we'll catch you next week on a whole nother episode. Bye for now.